Interestingly, there's been a turn back to Europe in a lot of ways. Italy, Switzerland, and not going to your typical locations. They're not necessarily interested in going back to Rome or going back to Venice. They are interested in going to some of the resorts, for instance, in northern Italy, and going hiking.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're the Midlife guys. Today, we are wrapping up our 3-part series focused on midlife travel. Andrew and I kicked things off with a discussion about why so many midlifers are drawn to travel. Last week, we had our good friends Greg and Abby provide some great insights on how to travel with kids. And if you've not listened to those episodes already, I would highly recommend it because we shared some great tips that you, our listeners, can use as you plan your spring and summer vacations.
Lots of good info in there.
There was lots of good info.
There was, yeah.
Today, we are joined by a very special guest. Joe Briere is a franchise owner at Cruise Planners. And despite the name of the company, Joe is an expert on both land-based and sea-based vacations and travel. He works with clients across the United States, including midlifers like myself and Andrew, to plan exotic and adventurous travel. Joe's love for travel began at a young age and deepened when he studied abroad in college. After graduating, he co-founded an eco-tour company in the Hawaiian Islands, working with local communities to create immersive cultural and nature-based experiences that went beyond the conventional tourist experience. That experience shaped his belief that great travel isn't just about checking a place off your list. It's about immersing yourself in the people, the culture, and the experiences that make it truly unique. Joe is here to discuss what he's seeing among midlifers. Where are they going? What experiences are they looking for? What's the planning process like for midlifers? And with that, I would like to introduce Joe.
Welcome, Joe.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to chat today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your experiences with our listeners. So first, I'd like to kick things off by learning more about what you are seeing among midlifers right now. What type of travel experiences are they looking for?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think I'm seeing a continuation of a trend that began after the pandemic, honestly. And that is a move away from more passive sightseeing types of travel and a shift towards more immersive travel, and immersive in every single way. So they don't just want to go to a destination and check it off their list. They want to actually experience it and be able to more fully take in that destination. I also am seeing along that same vein a move towards what I would describe as earned adventures. And for folks that are in the midlife range, we're still active. We still are pretty physically able, and certain destinations. And I'll give you a great example from great example is Peru. For years, folks go to Peru. They go to Machu Picchu, for instance, and they'll go by train. I am seeing a very strong demand for that same trip, but with an Inca Trail component, for example. They want to be able to hike into Machu Picchu, not just bus up there or take a train up there. So those are some of the big changes that I'm seeing. I'm also seeing a shift away from more conventional cruise itineraries on the cruise side. Folks are really leaning into expedition travel, which is a lot more experiential, and they're leaning into river cruising. And river cruising has been the most interesting because if you go back 10 or 15 years, river cruising, the impression of it was that's what you do when you're retired. And I can't even begin to tell you, it's not just 40s and 50s. I have folks in their 30s who are interested in river cruising because it's such an efficient way to see destinations and be more immersed in the local culture. even than doing a regular ocean cruise.
That's really interesting about the river cruises.
Also, a
I
lot
would
of group.
assume because you see the commercials of sorry for like Viking and stuff. It definitely feels like as an older group. That's interesting that it's skewing younger. Is part of it like the immersive thing again too, not just the efficiency of getting somewhere, but do you feel like you really are more in the middle of something?
So it's interesting you bring up Viking. And no hate towards Viking. Viking definitely, I think, is still
No,
geared
I just
towards
that's
an
what I
older
know of.
clientele.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. There are a lot of companies that are I would say reacting to the moment and bringing on more active onboard and onshore activities
Oh,
for more active people. Avalon Waterways, Ama Waterways are two that a lot of my clients seek out for that reason.
hmm.
Um, Bicycling tours that are part of the itinerary, hiking when in destination. So it is interesting. It's still largely, I think it still largely has a reputation for being something that is it's something you do when you're older, but it's definitely shifting, as are the
Hmm.
destinations. So river cruising has expanded dramatically outside of Europe. And,
Oh,
all my nail sales in Colombia. We have several that sail in Vietnam, Egypt, of course, along the Nile. And then India is another one where river cruising is starting to really take off.
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious though. You mentioned especially expeditions. Um, Traditionally, expedition companies, whether it be like Silversea or Seabourn or even National Geographic, are kind of very geared towards an older audience. I mean, do you feel like they are prepared for catering or in hosting a much younger midlife audience?
That's a great question. I think that some of them are, and I think some of them are adapting as we speak. There are a few companies out there that have definitely leaned into the expedition element over the luxury element. Because you're right, Mike. Luxury and expedition tend to go hand in hand. And what I will say about a lot of my younger midlifers is they're not really looking for that luxury component yet on an expedition cruise. There are times they are. That's not typically it. And um, I do believe that there are companies out there that have kind of met them in the middle. One that comes to mind readily, I just had some folks return from there, was Quark Expeditions. Their
Mhm.
ships are not luxury in this traditional sense that we think of luxury, but they are very much expedition focused, polar obsessed, is how they describe themselves. And the experience is really second to none if you're really looking to get in there and mingle with the scientists on board and the historians on board and all of those local experts. So yeah, it is a challenge to balance the two, because I do think when you look at the older demographic, like maybe our parents and older, they are looking for that more luxury experience on those expeditions. So it is something they kind of have to balance.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the ecotourism side of things too, because at least in my circles, um, typical places would be like Costa Rica, and hiking through the
Yeah,
rainforest there. But it sounds like, people, especially midlifers, are discovering new destinations to do hiking and more of that ecotourism type of travel, more immersive. Where
for
are they
sure.
going?
Well, interestingly, there's been a turn back to Europe in a lot of ways. Italy, Switzerland, and not going to your typical locations. They're not necessarily interested in going back to Rome or going back to Venice. They are interested in going to some of the resorts, for instance, in northern Italy, and going hiking in the mountains. Central America does remain popular, and then southern and eastern Caribbean, St. Lucia, for instance. I have folks who actively seek out hikes in St. Lucia, and I've been one of them myself. Um, so it's a lot of diversity out there in terms of eco travel. It's a broad term. It goes hand in hand a lot with wellness travel as well. And I will say, when it comes to the kind of conventional notion of wellness travel, we think of spas and pampering and, again, more luxury touches. And I think there has been a little bit of a shift more towards travel that focuses on unplugging and almost doing a nervous system reset and getting away from those busier, more like those busier wellness retreat style itineraries.
I'm curious, Joe. It's interesting you mentioned Italy and going to sort of off the beaten path places. I had some friends a couple months ago who had just gotten back from a trip to the Dolomites, and they've got two young kids as well. And it's kind of this like
Yeah.
wellness retreat type of a place, but was I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm curious if you're seeing this as like a trend elsewhere. Is it was geared family friendly, but they had programming where like one day the parents would kind of go off and do something together that was like very programmed for them or loosely programmed, and then they'd have stuff specifically for the kids to do. And then some days they would do stuff together as a family. And I know we talked about kind of family travel a lot last week, but I'm just kind of curious. I'd not heard of that before. If that's something that you're seeing more of, these sort of destinations that try to cater to the family more broadly and have stuff that's just for adults sometimes, just for kids sometimes, and for everybody other times.
Yeah, I will say, and I think a lot of that shift has come. I'll have to give some credit to the cruise lines, because they do such an
Yeah.
amazing job of having dual programming, where you can have adult-centered activities, children-centered activities, or a mix. And I think a lot of land destinations are catching up to that now and realizing that there is a desire for those locations. The Dolomites is another one that's where I was referring to specifically in Italy. Like it's just kind of blown
Yeah.
up in recent years. And I think they're realizing that there is demand for that, for folks who have children, and they've got to find a
Yeah.
way to be able to cater to everybody.
Cool. I'll tell them that they're very on trend then, my friends who are just
They are very on trend.
like,
They're very
good
on
job,
trend.
guys. You're on, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great area for that. It's fantastic.
It looked at some of the pictures they showed me looked unbelievable. But anyway, we have to, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested in learning more about the wellness slash really like these places that are helping midlifers unplug, because that's definitely been something that we have talked about, and you know, even in the research that we discussed both last week and the week before, that's why a lot of midlife parents are taking their kids on these vacations or to
Yeah.
travel because they want to get their kids to unplug. So I'd be curious to hear from your experience, like, what does that look like? Can you give some examples of some partners that you work with that offer this type of unplugged environment for their guests?
Yeah. I don't have a specific partner in mind. I know I can't say that I've sent anyone to a resort that does that. My mind always goes back to the White Lotus, the last season where they collected all their cell phones.
Yes.
I can't say that I personally have worked with that. The bigger thing that I have found is when folks find out they won't have cell service at a destination, they're not disappointed. And that does happen fairly frequently. And I always try to forewarn them, and they're like, "Yeah, no, that's perfect." Like as long as they know in advance and can handle whatever needs to be handled, it can set expectations for the folks who are going with them. I have had nobody object to that. And I hate to keep going back to this example, but it's been a common one for me lately is the Inca Trail. You don't have cell service on the Inca Trail, and no one is disappointed in that. Like you're so fully immersed in that moment. So it's not necessarily the health resort, Mike, to your point, but I think when they don't have a choice in particular, it's much easier to embrace it because it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be fully 100% in this experience now. I know if my phone could work when I'm on a destination like that, I'm gonna still be checking it pretty regularly. Just the nature of what I do. And I personally love the idea of not having a choice in the matter.
I'm
Losing
sure
my
there are a lot of
electronic
people
leash for
that
a
feel
bit.
that same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to um, get your thoughts about another topic,
Yeah.
um, because you just recently did a river cruise on the Nile.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Um, You did did you pre and post stay in Cairo?
Yes. Yep. I believe it was 2 nights in Cairo and ahead of time and 1 after.
Nice. Um, and I'm curious, to hear about like that experience for you. And, I know just from talking to friends, there's also, not just what it was like for you, but how you can kind of ease people's concerns. Cause I know I've had friends that were like, I would love to do that, but I'm a little concerned about, you know, the
Yeah.
environment there and how to navigate that.
Yeah. The first thing I would always start with is in Cairo in Egypt as a whole is geographically removed from what we're seeing over there right now. Doesn't mean that, I always try to speak to people's comfort level and suss that out first. But I had no concerns. And um, Egypt itself is so incredibly hospitable. I felt so welcomed by everybody I encountered there. It's definitely different, and I always prep folks for a little bit of culture shock. If you don't like to haggle, for instance, you need to be aware up front that you're going to have to be uncomfortable because they love to haggle when you're in markets and all. But I would ease people's minds by first saying Egypt is, they last year, and I don't have the number in front of me, but they grew their North American tourism industry exponentially. They have every year since
Huh.
COVID, and they're really invested in it. The number of companies that are operating on the Nile right now, it's every major river cruise line and then some.
Hmm.
I went with Insight Vacations, which is an escorted tour provider owned by the Travel Corp, and they have a fantastic portfolio. They have 5 or 6 different companies that each have a niche, and Insight is a 4 and 5 star experience, which I highly recommend for Egypt. I had an Egyptologist with me at all times, and I had a guide with me at all times, and I highly recommend that as well. And there will be folks who, in my experience, will resist that a little bit because they like that idea of independent exploration and to each their own. But Egypt is definitely somewhere that you get more out of your experience by having an expert with you. I can't imagine what that experience would have looked like if I'd been trying to navigate it on my own. I don't speak Arabic. Um, I wouldn't have known where to begin. Even as a travel advisor, I would have had some cliff notes, but when I was actually there on the ground and you're in the middle of it, it really helps to have that advocate with you. We got to do things that you wouldn't do on your own either. So we got to go into a village and visit an alabaster shop. And then we got to go to somebody's house and actually have bread with them in their living room. And they gave us a tour of their house and what life is like in their town. So I would say, I certainly understand folks being on edge in this moment. Um, I would not discourage anybody from going to Egypt, as I tell everybody, just pay attention to the advice from the State Department on any destination. Egypt is incredibly safe. It's incredibly accessible. You can actually take direct flights from Dulles on Egypt Air to Cairo, so it's very convenient. Um, and then just go in with an open mind and make sure you're going with an itinerary that provides you with that guide, and it'll be an experience unlike any other.
That sounds very cool. Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
that's
awesome.
wonderful.
I got to
Yeah, I
see
mean,
things that, you know, it was incredible. The number of temples that I would not have known about had I not had somebody to actually take
Yeah.
me there.
I just think how long that stuff has been there too is what blows my mind all the time. Like,
Yeah.
just some of the antiquities or the ancient civilization stuff. I'm just like, yeah,
And definitely go to the museum. The new
yeah.
Grand
Then it's
Egyptian
new,
Museum.
right? Or
It's brand
relatively
new. It
new.
opened the week before I
Yeah,
went.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that
that's
was
super cool. So you were able to, yeah.
I blocked off a half a day for it. Huge mistake. Should have been at least a day.
Well, they,
It's my
yeah.
only regret.
Yeah, I do think it's worth noting per Joe's comments that we're taping this in the middle of March 2026.
Yes,
And so there is an ongoing conflict in Iran, which is not near the Mediterranean in any way, shape, or
correct.
form, because we clearly have to remind people. Because I was just seeing one of the airline CEOs saying that they're seeing a softening in um, uh, demand for from older Americans going to Europe,
Yep.
because I don't think most Americans know how to look at a map of the world.
I was going to say that, and I didn't want to sound mean, but part of
You can let
what I
Mike do
do
that.
is
That's definitely his role, Leo, is to say those comments. So let him take it away. You're
geography
good.
matters, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. It's just like my parents when I go down to Curacao, because Curacao is right next to Venezuela. You
Venezuela.
know what? I will be fine. Don't worry about it. I'm just fine. Thank you.
Well, I do think this brings up sort of a broader question. I'm sort of curious, Joe, your thoughts or maybe a couple of top tips or recommendations you have for travelers, and less about, obviously, there are lots of geopolitical, conflicts going on right now in the Middle East.
Right.
There was the thing in Venezuela a couple months ago. So there's things happening, but I think just in general, and it's funny. My wife had sort of not a great travel experience recently because bad storms came through, shut down an airport for a couple of hours. So then everything was a complete mess, right? Trying to like figure out, well, how do we rebook people or get cars or figure stuff out? And it reminds me too of you were up with me, figure out some transportation for a trip that we're going to take later this year. And you're like, oh, by the way, did you realize the World Cup is happening? I was like, I did not realize that was happening at the exact time that I was planning to be somewhere. It's like these unexpected, well, the World Cup I probably should have looked at, but like weather is unexpected, or maybe there are other issues that happen where someone gets potentially stranded or has to deal with an unexpected hiccup. Do you have any advice
Oh
for
yeah.
kind of how folks, especially maybe midlifers, like how to deal with that or try to remain calm when figuring out travel snafus that will inevitably pop up?
Hire an experienced travel
Have
advisor.
a travel advisor. Yes.
That's one. Yes.
Man, Andrew, I've encountered this so much recently. And that is my biggest advice is have a travel advisor, have an advocate on your side who can handle fixing things when they go wrong while you're in that moment. But if you don't have that, and even if you do, remembering to just be flexible and to kind of roll with the punches. And I know that's really blasé sounding, but so much of it is out of our control. At flights in particular, there's only so much we can do when things go sideways. I had a guy or a family that went down to Antarctica, and they happened to be arriving into Argentina the day after the transit strike that lasted 24 hours. And I had built in this extra travel time for them, extra layovers, and I'm so glad I did, because they had 10 minutes when it was all said and done out of originally 3 hours to make their
Oh,
connecting
wow.
flight because of all the customs backup. So if you're building your own itinerary, build in that extra time. If you are not, make sure your travel advisor is, and then just be ready to pivot. It had a similar experience on his return. The weather was too bad for him to leave. He was flying back from Antarctica, and his trip got extended by 2 days.
Yeah.
He didn't have the best service in Antarctica, but he had me up here to work with the airline to get him rebooked on another flight. So,
Yeah.
And I think this is a really good point, because in our first episode we did mention the fact that, especially among midlifers, there's a lot of hesitancy to hire a travel advisor. And I've already told Joe this, so he knows. It's like, I was very hesitant to hire a travel advisor, for years, because I was like, I can just book it. But I have to say that it does mean the world when you have someone who is got your back and can help you when the unexpected happens, because that's kind of the fun with travel. The unexpected will happen.
Yeah.
well, and I'll add to that, Mike, what a lot of people don't realize, as a travel advisor, when it comes to the cruise lines and the resorts and the hotels and things of that nature, we are paid a commission after travel is completed. The price doesn't change whether you book it or I book it. So folks who don't use a travel advisor are actually paying for a service that they're not getting. And I'll often will lead with that when folks ask, well, why should I hire a travel advisor? Well, you're paying for one anyway. It's built into the cruise fare or the resort fare. And if you're not using an advisor, you're missing out on having the benefit of what you're spending money on.
That's a really good point. So I'd love to get your thoughts about where you see things going over the next 5 years for midlifers in terms of
Yeah,
their wants, their needs for travel. How's that
absolutely.
evolving?
I think it's going to remain very intentional. I think it's also going to remain very customized. I also think as midlifers, there's a lot of transitions that happen during this phase of life. So milestone birthdays, career changes, relationship changes, and travel, I think will continue to be used to mark those as a rite of passage. I think the personalization is going to continue to deepen. I already work with a lot of hybrid itineraries. Folks are not settling for a cookie cutter experience, or they're saying, man, I'm already taking this flight all the way to the other side of the world. I want to also add this thing on while I'm there. I think that's going to definitely continue. I think experiential depth is going to continue to matter. And, um, and I think people are definitely shifting away from viewing 5-star as meaning luxury to meaning access. So I've seen a notable shift with everybody towards shoulder season travel and alternative destinations in the same country, because folks are really exhausted with being in a throng or a crowd when they go on vacation, right? So I think those are trends that are going to continue. I also think that, and Mike, you have some experience with this, but the small ship within a ship experience, when we look specifically at cruising, that's going to, I think, continue to develop as well. So whether you're talking about the retreat on Celebrity or the Haven on Norwegian, a lot of people want that small ship experience. They're not quite ready to make the leap to a small ship, or maybe they're just loyalists and have status with these brands, so they can still get that same experience, and be in a very comfortable situation where they still have that big ship, those big ship options as part of their itinerary. And then I think I've seen this again since COVID. This is my mantra. Travel, I don't view travel as an escape from everyday life. I think should complement everyday life. And I think folks are continuing to make that mental shift as well. They're not treating their travel as an escape. They're treating it as a part of their story.
Because related to those trends, I just have two questions for you, Joe. So one is, you probably can't answer this one exactly, but will it keep getting more and more expensive to travel? It feels like prices have gone crazy for like flights and hotels and other stuff. So like, is that just where we're at now? I guess the demand is still going to be so high that travel is going to continue to be something that's sort of an expensive thing to do. And then I have a second question after that, but I'll let you tackle that first.
Give me the hard one first. The
Yeah,
short
so I know.
answer, the short answer is obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but I do
Right,
believe
yeah.
that we are never going to see prices drop
Yeah.
from where they are now. I do think flights will obviously fluctuate depending on the situation. Airlines are they're interesting right now, because even they are moving towards more first class seats, more business class seats.
Mhm.
It really is supply driven though. So as long as people are willing to pay that, they'll continue to expand those offerings and invest in those offerings at the expense of lower tiered options. I find it difficult because I'm an economy flyer. Like I'm not a flight snob, because I'd rather save my money for
Yeah.
the destination. So
I'm
I
with you
do share that
100%.
frustration. Yeah,
Yeah, and I have 2 kids, so I'm not paying for them to be in, like, premium seating on
exactly.
the
Yeah.
airplane. That's not
Um,
happening.
I don't. Yeah. Short answer and unfortunate answer is I don't see prices coming back down. I
Yeah.
will say though, with cruises in particular, that is dynamic pricing. And one of the things, another way that I pitch myself is when you book a cruise with me, I monitor pricing. And sometimes the price does drop after it's booked, and I am able to make that adjustment for you. So if there's a better sale that pops up before final payment, I always make sure my client gets a better price.
Okay, yeah.
If there's a trade-off for something, maybe they lose their onboard credit as a result, as long as the difference is greater, I check with them and make sure it's still what they want, and then I'll make that. So there's opportunities to catch those price fluctuations But I think as a trend line, you're going to see that it continues going to the right and up.
Yeah. Not what I wanted to hear, but I think you're right. Like that's just the reality of the world we live in.
Yeah.
Let me ask you to look in your crystal ball one more time real quick for hopefully a more positive answer. You mentioned the Inca Trail before, and we talked about kind of the Dolomites and some kind of in different places. Do you have like a handful of sort of up and coming destinations that you think are going to get hot for midlifer soon? Maybe like one or two of them that you're kind of keeping your eye on?
You know, if you had asked me this a month ago, the Middle East was on that list.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit fuzzy right now.
Right.
But the interest that I've had in the Middle East, Jordan, Dubai, that has been growing exponentially over the years. Outside of that, Africa for sure. Safaris and the amount of safari options, and not even just safaris, you know, trekking is another one that I've gotten interest in from folks who want to trek Kilimanjaro. I work with folks who not just want to go to South Africa, but want to actually do cruises around South Africa, which are available. So if you ever wanted to experience the continent without having that the constant moving around, you know, the benefit of a cruise is you unpack once. I'm seeing a lot more interest in both of those places for midlifers because they're coming into the time and or the resources where it's now on their agenda. You know, it's been maybe on their bucket list for years, and now it's a little bit more feasible. So
cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate you being here, sharing your experiences and your stories with us. I know a lot of midlifers will gain a lot from your expertise. And you can head over to Joe's website at travelprojoe.com to learn more. All right, we've blown through 30 minutes. If you've not done so already, please like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps us a lot. Remember, you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting platforms. And until next week, good luck, guys.
See ya.